A date with Samantha will kill.
Oh, I got good news and bad news.
After more than a decade of silence.
I'm not saying for sure that it looked like the work of some kind of psychotic.
What's the boogeyman?
Friday, the 13th. 12 of her friends were murdered.
It's not Muffy, it's her twin sister Buffy. She's got a twin sister.
Okay, and welcome to the Hysteria Continues. This is the third one, I think. We're joined, as usual, by myself. It's Justin from Hysteria Continues. The Hysteria Lives, even. I'm going to get this right one of these days. Anyway, and from the Body Count Continues is Joseph. Hi, Joseph.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Joseph. And Erik is joining us from Dublin.
Tora Laura, top of the morning to you.
Excellent, excellent. And we've got Nathan, aka Axe to Grind, joining us from the Body Count Continues forums and the new Axe to Grind Harrow's blogspot. Hello, Nathan.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here for part 3.
Excellent, excellent. We're very pleased to have you. Just going to say a little bit what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to play one of the trailers to one of the the movie we're going to talk about later. See if you can guess what it is.
Paramount Pictures cordially invites you to the party to end all parties.
April Fool. You are such a jerk. Is something wrong?
April Fool's Day. Get ready to party till you drop. Rated R.
Okay, yeah, so we're going to be talking about April Fool's Day, the 1986 slasher, which Joseph's going to be talking about, with the rest of us joining in a little bit later, and we might be talking a little bit about the dreaded remake.
A fantastic remake, I think you'll find.
Oh, okay, so there may be some difference of opinion.
I don't agree with that at all.
No.
We shall see, we shall see. First of all, let's have a little chat to Nathan. Nathan, we talked about the last couple of weeks a little bit why we got into slasher movies, so can you just give a little kind of pot review about why you have a love for the subgenre?
No, it's hard to remember because I've been watching these movies since I was 3 or 4 years old. And I first remember seeing The Slumber Party Massacre and Alice Sweet Alice, and I was hooked. I watched that Alice Sweet Alice tape until it broke. So, yeah. I mean, I've just been into them for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, well, no, fantastic. I think it's kind of, it's a love that dare not speak its own name for a lot of us. But now we're all coming out and proud as slasher movie fans. And I think hopefully we've got more people listening to us now than we have actually joining us today. But we shall see. I mean, the other things we're going to talk about today is, there's 2 other things. We're going to do our top 3 final girls, which I can imagine is going to be a little bit contentious. And we're also, perhaps we'll chat now, is some of the films we've seen recently. Shall I go first, guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get away.
Okay, well, I've been teasing Erik about this. We talked about this, I think, on the first podcast, which is Scream Time, which is the British anthology. Which had 3 sort of horror shorts in it, and one of them was a slasher movie short. Unfortunately, it didn't have Dave Van Day from Dollar in that one. He was in the Killer Gnome one. I don't think either you, Nathan or Joseph, did you have Dollar in the States? Well, not Dollar, but the group, the cheesy 80s duo.
I've heard of them, but
you've heard of them. Okay, well, they're very, very cheesy. David Van Day was now runs a burger van, so he's called Burger Van Day. So he's not obviously made a lot of money from his pop career, but the Screen Time was like quite a cheesy film. I think it's from 1983. And I was watching a film the other day with Charisma Carpenter. I think it was in Buffy. And it was a film called Psychosis. It's a new sort of British slasher movie. Have any of you heard of that?
No.
Nope. Can't say I have.
Yeah, it's a remake, actually a proper remake of the Dreamhouse segment from Scream Time. Unfortunately, it is an absolute pile of shite. It is absolutely awful. It's really funny. Charisma Carpenter gets bummed in it by the gardener. And there's some great bits on the extras where she talks about how difficult it is for a TV actress to summon up the skill and the courage to go through with being sodomized on camera, which is quite bizarre.
She doesn't have any charisma, as it was.
She doesn't have any charisma in it, but she gets bummed by this gardener. She moves into this kind of house, and she keeps on seeing these flashbacks or maybe flash forwards of this slasher murders. And this gardener stands buck naked in front of her, full frontal. You see his dong and everything. And then later in the film, she invites him in to make for him to make her a stew. And it's just the most ridiculous film. It's really, really stupid. And it also stars the really bad actor Paul Sculfer, who went out with Cameron Diaz and Jennifer Aniston, I think. And but it's worth a look for bad movie fans. So I've got a couple of other little ones to talk about. How about you guys? How about you, Nathan? Have you seen anything recently?
Well, recently I saw My Soul to Take. I'll let Joe take the reins on that one, though.
Oh God, why?
My favorite one recent was Reykjavik, the Whale Watching Massacre. I loved this movie. I love the fact that, you know, you get a good mindset of what the characters are going to be like, and then they all change halfway through the movie. People you think will be likable end up despicable, and people you think will survive end up not surviving. So it's really unpredictable, and I love who ends up surviving. I thought it was original and really well done, actually.
Yeah, I really liked it. You saw that, Joseph, didn't you?
Oh yes, it was a really good movie. And another thing I like about the movie is that you know, you have this like Texas Chainsaw like family on board this boat, you know, and they're like killing people with like a harpoon, and I believe that's the alternate title is harpoon. But for once, the family is like considerably normal compared to most of the characters who are like running away from the family. I like that aspect of the movie.
Yeah, it's great. How about, do you see it, Erik?
I haven't seen it, no, and that's because I haven't forgiven Iceland for the volcano last year.
Oh, right.
I'll have to wait for that to die down.
Did that stop your holiday?
It meant a 16-hour overland trip to Brighton for a wedding.
Oh, right.
Which should have taken me sort of 2 hours to get to.
Okay, well, but it's worth seeing.
I've seen it mentioned on the boards now. It's one I'm going to check out, definitely.
Yeah. Excellent. And how about you, Joseph? What's the you maybe My Soul to Take? I hear it's not so good.
Yeah, we watched that last Friday at a friend of ours named Greg, and we have another friend named Jamie who actually liked it. It's just terrible. I mean, Wes Craven, I think he was on something when he did it. He has this like Robert Altman fetish where characters talk over one another and they try to sound hip and energetic by having all these weird buzzwords. And the script is all over the place. There's scenes where like people will be talking about things that have nothing to do with what's going on, and then, you know, all of a sudden out of the blue, the killer will show up and he'll say something like, "It's time to die," and then he'll kill them, and then it'll switch to some other scene. And there's a hilarious bit where, you know, at the beginning, an ambulance crashes, and 16 years later, so something like that, the town doesn't even bother to clean up the wreckage. It's just still sitting there. It's just stupid.
I've heard it's pretty bad. I mean, it doesn't exactly instill confidence for Scream 4, really, does it?
No.
Well,
but he didn't write Scream 4, did he?
No, Kevin Williamson wrote Scream 4.
Good.
See, Wes Craven, he's still a good director, I think, but his writing it's really out there. I think this was him trying to be clever, and it just came off as just weird and really just cringe-inducing, and it's just annoying as hell.
But the thing is, Wes Craven, he's got a reputation of making really good films followed by really, really awful films. He's really all over the place, isn't he? And I really hope Scream 4 isn't one of those. And with all the reshoots and rewrites and all the sorts of things, it doesn't exactly bode well, but we shall see. How about you, Erik? What have you seen recently?
The trailer was really good.
Well, I saw this week the recent redux of I Spit on Your Grave, and I have to say I did really enjoy it. I hope that doesn't make me sound really sick and twisted, but it doesn't have sort of the harrowing grittiness of, if there is such a thing, in the original. What it does is it gets the setup out of the way in a fairly quick manner, and then the revenge aspect is done very much in the manner of Saw or Hostel. The heroine sets up all these elaborate devices to kill the rapists. And I mean, getting back onto the subject of sodomy once again, there's one guy who sodomizes her, and he gets absolutely the best possible death. It's the very last shot in the film.
That's right.
It has to be seen. So, I mean, some of the stuff is just incredibly gruesome. It's very over the top, so it's impossible to take seriously, and it's possible to be offended by it. But it zips along at an incredible pace, and I really, really liked it, and it was a real surprise. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you?
I haven't seen it. No. I mean, I saw the first film was one of those films you kind of only really need to see once, and I saw it years ago. Was it kind of as kind of like the Last House on the Left?
Exactly. It was exactly like the Last House on the Left thing. And spoiler alert, the very last shot in Last House on the Left with head in the microwave. It's kind of that kind of ilk all the way through the film, more or less. So it's not going to upset anyone.
Nathan,
but it's a lot of fun.
Yes, I saw it, and I agree with Eric. I really liked it. One thing that it did that the original didn't do that I really enjoyed is after the rape and after they think she's dead, it focuses on the rapist for like about 15 minutes or so, and you see what they do after the rape and how they cover it up, and like how they pretty much have no remorse except for obviously Matthew, who is the mentally handicapped one, the only one that has any remorse for what he's done. I like that they did that.
They do, because they go and, like the guy who sort of bum rapes her, to use that phrase again, Justin, we see that he's sort of a very tame family man, and he has a child who he adores and that type of thing, and he seems a completely different person.
Well, I just want to say, we have some really sick metaphors on this show. Bum rape.
Well, we shall. I'm sure we will come up with plenty more within the coming weeks, so stay tuned, folks. Just one other film that I saw recently, and I probably kind of wish I hadn't, was Blood Night. Have any of you seen that?
I've heard of it. I've seen it mentioned on the forums. Yeah, it's just the legend of Molly something, or
Molly Hatchet.
Yeah.
I watched the first 15 minutes of it, and I couldn't get through it.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, it's quite well set up. It's this idea of this kind of evil child in 1978, so obviously aping Halloween, kills her parents and then gets sent to an asylum. And when she starts menstruating, she becomes basically psychotic and kills everyone in the asylum. So real kind of rage, sort of female rage, and she gets shot dead by the police. But she has a baby girl who, in inverted commas, dies. And then 20 years later, a group of partying teens are celebrating the legend of Blood Night. And they go to a graveyard and basically summon her spirit. Now, it has a twist, which is so obvious. I think I already guessed it when I was in my mother's womb. And the twist, it's no point spoiling it because you can't really spoil it, is the fact is the baby didn't die. In fact, she's come back as one of the partying girls, and you have to try and guess who that's going to be. Considering it's got Danielle Harris in it from the Halloween movies, both the 4 and 5, the original ones, and the remake, and she's playing a college student. And to be honest, I mean, Danielle Harris is great. I didn't like her in Hatchet 2. I thought she was pretty poor in that. Her eyebrows did strange, better acting in that than she did. But in this, she's playing a college student, and she's playing a college student in Urban Legend. 13 years ago? She doesn't really convince in that. And spoiler alert, it turns out she's the killer. So you have her, she's like 4 foot nothing. She's like a pretty little dwarf thing. Well, it sounds horrible. I don't mean it horrible away, but she's very short, and she's carrying around a massive axe. It's just not very convincing. And it's peopled by some of the most obnoxious teenagers you've ever seen in your life. So they do everything to set up the early 80s vibe, and they completely ruin it. And this is what I don't understand, and this is what we might talk about with the April Fool's Day remake, is why they people these films with such obnoxious characters. I mean, at least pepper it with a few people you like.
Right, that's just going back to what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
Just these remakes and these modern slashers, they're littered with characters you just want to die, and you want to punch them in the eye, punch them in the face, anywhere on the body.
I agree. When we were watching My Soul to Take, I didn't like any of the characters, and I asked either Greg or Joe, I said, is it because I'm old now and I just don't get these teenagers? Is that why I hate them? And I can only relate to teenagers back when I was a kid?
It's difficult to know. I mean, I just don't understand. They're all, like in this film and in lots of different films, I mean, the modern ones. I mean, even if you look back at something like I Know What You Did Last Summer and films like that, you at least had some kind of sympathetic characters. You had the jerks, and you've always had the jerks in the classic slasher movies, but it was balanced by characters that you liked. In this, it's just obnoxious all the way through. There's no, so you just don't care about them, and that's what Blood Night did. I mean, it was very perfunctory all the way through. Some good gore effects, but it was
essentially everyone's the jerk in these movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure teenage audiences can't identify with that completely. I mean, it's just bizarre. And I mean, is there any other films you want to talk about, or should we move on to the final girl segment?
I saw one recently called The Maze.
Okay.
It's a bunch of teens go to a corn maze at night, and basically a guy comes in and just starts killing them. You know, it's got a good setting and all, but they make the mistake of having a killer who's really not threatening. And again, the characters are unsympathetic because they're so stupid and obnoxious. And then they take away the good setting, which is inside the maze, and they move it to a police station, and they reveal the killer, the identity of the killer really early. And basically he has this like hour-long monologue where he's like explaining his whole plot, and it's just really annoying.
I've heard. I think I heard you mention that one on the forums, but it's not one I've seen yet. I mean, I may, if I'm feeling particularly masochistic, I might line that one up. How about you, Erik? Is anything else?
Yeah, I saw the latest John Carpenter film last month. It's opened here theatrically. I don't know if it made it over anywhere else, but it's called The Ward, and it belongs on video. Believe me, it's incredibly mediocre, and it resembles quite closely another film that I won't mention because if I do, it'll be a big spoiler. But there's no reason at all to see this film. It has kind of a slasher element, but and it has the opening credits are done in the same font as the classic John Carpenter films like Escape from New York and Starman, that era. So that gave you kind of a nostalgic buzz. But the film is just so boring, so incredibly boring, and it's cliched. And it the kind of vibe it gave me was those mid noughties films like, you know, The Boogeyman and Darkness Falls. It's that kind of film, just really, really run of the mill.
How the Mighty Have Fallen, unfortunately. Yeah.
Sorry?
How the Mighty Have Fallen.
Yes, exactly, yeah. He hasn't fallen to the degree of maybe Dario Argento, but at least Dario Argento's failures are entertaining.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm sure we'll come on to Dario Argento at some point, because he's doing Dracula 3D, isn't he? I think for his next film. Which you're just thinking,
are you serious?
Yeah, Dracula 3D. I mean, you're thinking, because I spoke to actually, I can't go, I have to be top secret about this, but I did speak to an actress who was in a film I'm doing some research on back in the 80s, but she's auditioning for Dracula 3D. And I don't know what it's going to be, but the fact is his other recent films have been so dreadful. I haven't actually watched Giallo, the kind of his newest one, but again, that might be one that might be worth us having a look at if we can bear the pain. How about you, Nathan? Lastly, is there anything else you want to bring up?
No, I was going to bring up Splatter University, but I'll spare you that, Justin.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Thank you for that. I thought when Joseph was saying there was one person in the world who loved that film, little did I know that they would be appearing on the airwaves with you. But I won't hold that against you. So.
My, how the tables have turned.
Oh, no. God, I'm a bit scared. Okay, well, let's turn the tables again, and let's actually talk about characters we do like. And one of the things we're going to do is like a top 3 final girls. Now, obviously, the final girl has been a standard in the slasher movie not before Jamie Lee Curtis, but Jamie Lee Curtis probably was the first, what we understand as the final girl. And I'm sure Jamie Lee Curtis is going to come up on the list. She's certainly going to come up on my list. But as if you didn't know, I'm sure you do. If you listen to this, you know the final girl is exactly that. She's usually the girl she is the girl that is the last one standing, usually the one that's battling the killer. And usually, I'm trying to think if there's actually been a really obnoxious final girl. Maybe there has. Maybe we can talk about that. But we're going to choose 3 final girls. I'm sure we're going to choose a lot of the same ones, but hopefully it'll be quite an interesting sort of way of sparking debate. So, should we start with Erik? What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Deborah Benson, who plays Constance in Just Before Dawn. The reason I've chosen her above others is, first of all, her ability to run around in possibly the tightest shorts I've ever seen. I mean, the chafing she must have got from running through the woods in those shorts must have been unbelievable. Secondly, she gets my respect because of her survival improvisation skills. You know, fist down throat. I don't think anyone could have thought of that. Not even Jamie Lee Curtis herself would have come up with that scheme. And if you also notice the fact when she takes the fist out of the mouth, and it's covered in saliva, she doesn't even go ew. So, I mean, she's feisty stuff. This girl.
Yeah. I mean, she's good. I'd love to find out what she thought about that film. I don't know if she's done much recently.
I'd like to find out who came up with the idea of sticking a fist in someone's mouth as a method of murder.
Well, Jeff Lieberman's is quite atypical. You know, the stuff he does is very, very different, isn't it, to a lot of things. And Just Before Dawn has got a very different feel.
He does. He's made three. He's made three classic movies, in my opinion. Three of my favourites: This, Blue Sunshine, and Squirm. Three sort of different horror subgenres he's tackled, and all very successfully.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Is there anything else to say about Deborah?
No. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if she comes up. I mean, we've got quite a few. How many?
I haven't seen her in anything else. This is her one and only appearance in my DVD collection, as far as I know.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe check to see what's happened to her. It'd be great. We talked about trying to get some people on the show, and I think we'll try and make a mission to do that, to do some interviews. So, who knows? Maybe we'll have her on the show at some point, which would be great. All right, Joseph, what's your number 3?
All right, my number 3 is Jess from Black Christmas. Despite having the unfortunate last name of Hussey, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Olivia Hussey. I don't know. I kind of like her because she seems real. They deal with like an unhinged boyfriend, and a house full of kooky scragglers, and then you have that whole abortion subplot. And then towards the end, when she learns that the caller has been inside the house the whole time, she does make the mistake of grabbing a fireplace poker and going upstairs when she should have went outside. But she actually puts it to good use, by bludgeoning poor Peter to death, thinking he's the killer. So she has a lot of gusto. I admire her. Plus, she has that foxy accent that I like.
Yeah. I really like. I mean, Black Christmas is one of my favourite films of all time, and I like, again, talking about. I mean, she's a very sympathetic character, and she fights back as very much a blueprint for some of the later Final Girls. Right. But then you've got Margot Kidder, who's kind of the bitchy kind of girl, but also quite, fun and sparky. And the different other girls they come across quite realistic, don't they? I really like her. I think she's good. I mean, one of the people didn't hate the remake. I quite enjoyed the remake. One of the few people, and I think that might.
I'm one of the few people who liked it as well, actually.
I think it might be
as a matter of fact, I'm the only one on the show who hated it. I couldn't stand it.
I loved it.
Really? Okay. We can all gang up on Joseph. Because I was thinking that might be quite a good one to do, actually. Remakes we liked, yeah. Well, I mean, that's why the way I saw it's a good way to do a remake is just kind of think, well, we can't top that. We can't, the calls coming from inside the house is now such an old cliche. Let's do something completely different, but make it like a popcorn slasher, but in quite a disturbing kind of gory sort of hue to it as well. So, but I mean that's talk for another day. But yeah, Olivia Hussey I thought was really good in the film, and she has that perfect mix of vulnerability but fighting back.
I like the when she actually realizes that her friends are probably dead. The way she just kind of loses it, and she's like, "Barb, answer me!" and she's screaming at the top of her lungs. She just puts on a really good, strong performance, I thought.
Yeah,
she has a great scream.
Yes, a really good scream.
Absolutely, and I love I won't spoil the ending for that film if people haven't seen it, but it's got that ambiguous ending, which I really, really liked. Just one thing, just while I think about it, we're going to come on to yours, Nathan, in a second, but it was just the idea when I was looking at the Final Girls is that apart from people like Deborah Benson, actually, in Just Before Dawn, most of the Final Girls actually get rescued by men, don't they, at the end of slasher movies? All the ones I can think of. Deborah Benson's one of the few that actually saves herself. I don't think does she get rescued by?
No, because her fella is writhing around on the floor being completely useless while she's doing all the fighting. Yeah.
It's Greg Henry. He's just basically sitting over there shivering like a little bitch.
And crying, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
He's crying.
So there you go. That's perfect. How about you, Nathan? What's your number 3?
Well, I was alternating my number 3s, and since Erik picked Connie, who was one of my alternates, I'm going to go with my other one, which is Joyce from Bloody Birthday, played by Laurie Levin. I think she is completely personable. She's very likable, and that's what I really like about her is all her characters are very three-dimensional. She seems very human, like somebody I could know in real life. And, you know, battling these three little brats at the end, I thought she did a pretty good job. You know, you could tell she didn't really want to kill them, so she just subdued them, and I like that. Although I will admit it's kind of cheesy when she's got this huge fishbowl and one of the kids jumps in, instead of busting it over his head, she splashes him in the face with it. But you know, she's still very plucky, and I like that. That's how I describe her, plucky. And I really love her. I love her voice. I love her, you know, I just think she's a really good heroine.
Yeah, no, she's great, and of course she's in The Prey, and we discussed, I think it was last week, how I inadvertently suggested she was an adult actress, which didn't go down too well. But no, yeah, I really like her in that. She's got she got a bowl haircut in that as well, which she even managed to rock.
Yes,
so
she does.
But what can you do? I mean, she was in an early '80s film, because that film's one of the films that kept on being re-released under loads of different titles, wasn't it? Like The Creeps, and it got released about 4 or 5 times under lots of different titles. But yeah, that's a great film. I really like it. It's a good choice. So. Just moving along, my number 3 is Leslie Donaldson in Funeral Home, and also not just Funeral Home, but all the other films that she was in. And in a lot of ways, I think it's a real shame. I mean, Funeral Home's quite a cheesy film, and Leslie herself would probably say, you know, it's quite a cheesy film. And there's a great bit in it where she's running away inexplicably from a little black cat that's called Mitten in the credits. Not scary at all, and we're not quite sure why she does that. But I always find her, again, it's this perfect mix of she's very feisty in a lot of the films she's in, but she's got that innocence and that vulnerability as well, and that kind of works really, really well. And I think it's a real shame, actually, that she carried Funeral Home, which I think is the first slasher movie she did. And then she went on to do, like, obviously Happy Birthday to Me, and she died. She was the first person to die in that. Curtains, obviously, she's probably in the most memorable scene of Curtains when she's ice skating in slow-mo, being chased by the hag-faced killer, and her head turns up in a toilet bowl. I really like Leslie, and we spoke a little bit about her before, and hopefully we might be able to get her on the show at some point if she's up for it. She's a very feisty lady in real life, and I just wish, actually, we'd seen her actually as a final girl in one of the more higher profile slasher movies. But when I think of early 80s actresses that worked in lots of different of these films, then Leslie Donaldson always comes to the top of my list. I mean, she's one of the favourites, and she's always a highlight to see on screen. I say, are we going to get to the point now? I'm actually impressed. Out of 4, we haven't spoken about each other's ones yet, but I'm sure that's going to happen. So, Erik, what's your number 2?
Well, my number 2 is a lady I'm sure is going to appear on all 4 of our lists, and it is Amy Steele. And this is on the basis of both Friday the 13th Part 2 and April Fool's Day, which we're going to talk about later. Well, first and foremost, she's just a terrific actress, and she's a really likable presence in both films. She has all the feisty, intelligent traits of the best of Final Girls. She loses one, like she probably would have made my number 1 if she hadn't weed herself for seeing when she saw the rash under the bed. I think she's as good in April Fool's Day as she is in Friday the 13th Part 2, although I think the Friday the 13th film is far superior. I just think she's just an incredible, likable presence. I think it's a shame that she didn't sign on for Friday 3 in the end, because the way her career turned out, I think, it actually would have been a good move for her in the end. And she could have taken over from Jamie Lee Curtis as the Scream Queen of the 80s, because she came along in 1981 just as Jamie Lee Curtis was jumping off that bandwagon. And, we could be talking about Amy Steele as being the Scream, the final girl of, 6 or 7 horror films. As it is, she was only in the 2. I assume now that I won't hand over to any of you, because I assume that Amy Steele is on everyone's list. If not, you're all bonkers.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's on mine. How about Nathan and Joseph? Is she on both of your lists?
Yeah, she's on mine.
Okay. She's my number 2 as well.
Mine too.
So shall we go to Joseph next? If you want to talk about that, because she's my number 2 as well. So.
Well, yeah, she's my number 2. I like the scene where. She's being chased by Jason, and she has the fortitude to actually kick him right square in the nuts when the goal gets rough. I always love that, and Jason's always like, ugh, and he just kind of bends over and then she just takes off the other way. And she's really resourceful, and she does that whole psychoanalyzation of him at the end, pretending to be his mother. And, you know, there's that one image that is like circulated on the internet of her holding the pitchfork. That's just an awesome image. So, yeah, she deserves a number 2 spot, I think.
Absolutely. How about you, Nathan? Is she your number 2, or not?
She's my number 2.
She's number 2
because, and you know, I actually kind of like the scene where, you know, she wets herself, because I felt that made her. I don't know. It made me feel even worse for her, for the predicament she's in, because, you know, she'd been drinking beer all night, so that's probably going to pass right through.
Yeah.
And
how did that puddle get through her jeans, though, I wonder?
But it wasn't her, though, wasn't it? That's Stephen Miner said it was the rat that.
Was it?
That's a lot for a rat.
It is a lot for a rat, but that's what there's been this eternal debate since 1981 about who pissed themselves.
You're never going to get common ground on this debate.
I think it was.
Because,
I think it was meant to be Amy Steele, but they're trying to cover their tracks now, realizing how ridiculous it was by saying it was the rat.
What's funny is Amy Steele herself even said that she thought that Jenny was the one that did it.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Because I mean, obviously, she wouldn't have been under the bed.
Let's just be grateful it was just urine and not something else.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that might have been a little too far.
That might have been, well, a big wet fart that would have been getting stuff away. But anyway, if we go back, sorry, Nathan. Sorry,
Justin could have made a metaphor about it.
Yes, I shall think of one privately. Nathan, what else did you like to say about Amy?
Well, I pretty much agree with what all has been said. I love the image with her with the pitchfork. I actually have a poster with that image on, which, if all goes well, I plan to meet her in June at Monster Mania and get her to sign it. But yeah, she's just a really great heroine, and I did like her a lot better in Friday the 13th Part 2 than I did in April Fool's Day. I still love her in April Fool's Day, just not as much.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. I mean, she's my number 2 as well. So just to. I mean, what can be said that hasn't already been said? Apart from, again, I agree that she, for me, she's kind of the consummate final girl. Apart from my number 1, she's my second favourite. I really like the fact that she's kind of like an every final girl, in so much that she's attractive. She'll strip down for cheesecake, bikini call down by the lake. She'll go out with the boys drinking. She's nice, but she as soon as she won't take any shit. Basically, she'll talk about sort of, she's a psychology major, isn't she? Which interestingly, Amy Steele, I believe, is a psychologist now, or she does counselling. But I like the fact that she, as soon as she's challenged, she turns around, kicks him in the nuts, uses psychology thing to pretend to be Mrs. Voorhees, all these different things. I mean, she's ably helped in Friday the 13th Part 2 by the fact that Jason is essentially like not Buster Crabbe. Who was the guy in the silent films who kept on things falling out of planes and things falling on him?
Harold Lloyd.
That's the one. Because he's like Harold Lloyd in Friday the 13th Part 2, isn't he? Falling off things, standing on a chair, collapsing.
True, yeah.
So she is ably thing. And of course, I love the ending when Muffin comes back, which was fantastic, the dog. And then that great shot of the coming through the window, smashing through the window. She's just basically, she's everything. I mean, she's taking from Halloween and Jamie Lee Curtis into 1981, whereas in Alice in Friday the 13th, she was quite wet. I mean, I know, Erik, you obviously...
I quite like her, yeah.
I mean, she's probably slightly more realistic in Friday the 13th. But ultimately, Amy Steele becomes almost a precursor to Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street, who becomes the ultimate uber final girl who would be on my list. But I just really like her. I mean, she's attractive, she's smart, she's resourceful, she's everything you'd want in a final girl. Again, it's just a shame that she gets carried away at the end in an ambulance whimpering. And so, again, it's this whole weird thing. Actually, in the Friday the 13th films, with Dana Kimmel, who didn't make my top 3, perhaps surprisingly, when she gets carried away by the police in the back of the sheriff's, like with her mouth opening and shutting like a guppy fish and trying her best not to look like she's come from some Amdram production. But she's, Amy Steele's carried away in the same way, rescued by men, which is this kind of weird dynamic for the early 80s slasher movies. It's rare to actually find one where a final girl is actually her own saviour. And again, as Erik said, it would have been so fantastic for her to have come back in the third film. And I don't know. Was it the third film they were talking about her coming back in him chasing around a psychiatric hospital?
I think so. Yeah.
Which would have been amazing, and it's a lost opportunity. And I've always had this thing that I would love. I thought it would have been great to do a Friday the 13th film where you get back all the surviving final girls and you have it as a counsellor camp where they all come together to talk about their experiences and their life experience and talk their way through it. And then Jason turns up and starts killing them. I mean, that would be fantastic, and Amy would be great to do that. But yeah, that's Amy Steele. So
I would just like to add before we go to number one that I also liked Amy Steele for her ability to laugh alongside the menstruation jokes, and she didn't take it to heart. She fired one right back at him.
She wielded a mean chainsaw too.
Exactly.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. So, but she's not our number one. So, Erik, who is your number one?
Well, as I said, she would be my number one, apart from if this woman didn't exist, and this woman is Dana Kimmel. Dana Kimmel is just
oh my god!
No, I'm only joking. My number one.
I was going to say, Erik. I'd have to. I thought it had to deserve one of those. Lindsay Day George right back at you. Sorry, go on.
It's Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously.
Of course.
The reason being that, as we said in the first show, Halloween 2 was the first ever horror film, I think, even that I saw, and like she was instantly a favorite of mine. And I through the 80s, I used to seek out all her films, horror or not. I know we're probably all going to talk about Halloween, but I want to talk a tiny bit about her work in Prom Night, which is probably the least popular of her slasher films. It certainly is a weak film, but I think she's absolutely outstanding in it. She's only a final girl in it for literally 2 minutes because there's no final girl action as such. She literally just hits the guy on the head with the axe, and that's the end. But I mean, the final shot of her crying and weeping with her dead brother in her arms is quite melancholy and quite sad for a film that's just so incredibly silly and cheesy up to that point. Also, bonus points for dancing her tits off so well in the film, which is that's a thing that will earn brownie points with me if you dance in a film like that. Better than Beyonce, and me. Better than me even.
She certainly is a good mover alongside Leslie Nielsen.
Yes. So, I don't know what your opinions are.
Yeah.
I agree. I really liked her. Yeah. I liked her in Prom Night a lot, and Erik hit the nail on the head. I love the scene at the end, like right after she hits him with the axe, and she looks into his eyes, and she knows exactly who it is. And that acting that she gave in that particular moment, without even saying anything, was terrific.
Terrific, and I would have loved to have seen what Prom Night could have been like if they could have bottled that kind of intensity and put it into the rest of the film as well. It could have been something, on a par with Halloween. As it is, it's a kind of a fun Carrie meets Saturday Night Fever disposable thing, I suppose.
Yeah,
but she's terrific in it, and I mean, she's obviously terrific in she was in Halloween 2, Terror Train, and this one. And I mean, even H2O, which at the time it came out, I went to see it twice in the cinema on the same day. I was really in love with that film. I'm not sure I stand by that opinion now, but I mean, she is terrific in that. And you were talking about final girls who are rescued by men at the end. I mean, she pretty much goes out on her own with that axe at the end of H2O.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to talk about Jamie Lee Curtis. It's going to no surprise. It's going to be my number one. But just reminds me, the only thing that got me, because we've been talking a little bit about the David Grove book, Jamie Lee Curtis Scream Queen, which I finished. And I said last time I had mixed feelings about it. I mean, it's a great book. There's stuff in there that I just didn't know about, and it's a wealth of information. It's a bit awkwardly written as far as I'm concerned. Some bits are a bit repetitive. But the thing that always got me actually with Jamie Lee Curtis, I'll talk a little bit more about why I like her when it comes to my turn, and I know I'm muscling in here, but is that the thing that I never understood was at the end of H2O, and if you haven't seen it, here comes a spoiler, she chops Michael Myers' head off. But of course, it's not Michael Myers. It's some ambulance man who's had his larynx crushed. And then she expressed outrage about being in the following film. And I thought, hold on a minute, it's in your contract. So it was a bizarre thing that she signed on to finish this off once and for all. But then she signed a contract where she was going to come back for the following film. But I'll talk a bit more about her. I'm just interested to know whether or not we've got a full house of Jamie Lee here. Joseph, who's your number one?
Jamie Lee.
Okay.
But more so
you told me you weren't putting
than Halloween. Yeah, I told you it wasn't going to be the character from Halloween.
Oh, right, I see.
You know, she's obviously good in Halloween, but I thought she was better in Terror Train. She saw through Hart Bachner's sleazy charm. She gives Derek McKinnon a run for his money, and that scene where she's basically in the cage and he's, you know, stabbing at her, and she ends up fighting back. She ends up, you know, putting him down and knocking him out the train and all that stuff. And she's a great runner. She's athletic. She's a great screamer, obviously, because she is a scream queen. I don't know. I liked her character a little more in Terror Train, although, you know, obviously Halloween's a better movie.
Yes.
Jamie Lee is a real trooper in Terror Train, because I was thinking about the scene you're talking about where he's choking her and she's sliding down the wall and she hits her head and she keeps going. There's no cut.
Yeah,
that's she hit her head really hard.
That was not scripted. It was real. So yeah, she put a lot of effort in that role, I think, and it's one of those roles where I don't think a lot of people really talk about it. You know, they always talk about Halloween or Prom Night. No one really ever mentions her in Terror Train, and so you know, I thought, you know, she deserved to be number one for that role alone.
I think possibly with Terror Train, it was actually because Halloween was obviously a massive success. Prom Night was one of the biggest box office successes the following Halloween and Friday the 13th, or around about that same time. But Terror Train was actually one of the first flops, wasn't it? Slasher movie flops, which I don't know if that's one of the reasons. It certainly made more money than Road Games, which is the other kind of very semi-slasherish film that she was in. But have you got anything else you want to say about her, Joseph?
I did want to say, you know, as a final girl, she's probably like manlier than half the male cast, which is kind of, you know, I don't know if I should really say something like that, considering she's probably going to be on. Considering she's probably going to be on the show next time. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we've got a lined up hotline.
I think I pretty much wrapped it up for her.
Okay, well, excellent. Thank you, Joseph. How about you, Nathan? Who's your number one?
Well, I'm going to go against the grain here. My number one is Valerie from the Slumber Party Massacre.
Wow. Okay.
Played by Robin Steele or Steele. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her last name. But I think she is terrific. And it brings me back to something Justin said during the last podcast. I believe you're talking about Jamie Lee, about how you like her because you can sense she's vulnerable. And they do this in Slumber Party Massacre with Valerie. I mean, at the very beginning of the movie, she can hear the other girls bad-mouthing her. And you could tell, like, it really, you know, hurt her feelings really badly. And you want to, like, when I saw that, I wanted to jump to her defense, because she's really a nice person and hadn't done anything wrong. And as the movie goes on, you know, when she finally does confront the killer, she hides in the basement while the killer is battling someone else upstairs. And she could have just hid down there. He didn't know she was there. But the whole time she's down there, she's finding a weapon. And then she finds that machete, and she wastes no time. She runs upstairs and chases the killer outside, swinging that machete at him. I mean, how many final girls can actually say they chased the killer in a chase scene?
That's a good point, isn't it?
I mean, she chased him out by the pool, and, you know, she castrated him, so to speak, because she chopped the blade of his drill off when he held it up. And, you know, she fought him, and it also brings back to something we were talking about earlier. She didn't get rescued by any man, because the men in that movie were useless. They got killed fairly early on. I mean, actually, at the end, it's kind of three girls fighting him, and she's the one that stepped up to the plate and, you know, is the one that took him out.
Yeah, it's not a film. I haven't seen it for quite a few years, but I remember when I quite enjoyed, and of course, it's the one that was written or directed by a woman, wasn't it? Amy Holden. And written by sort of bisexual feminist. Was it Rita Mae Jones, or was it the other way around?
It was Rita Mae Jones wrote it, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of got that whole thing. But of course, Roger Corman came in like Roger Corman does and said, right, let's all the boobs out and let's do all this kind of stuff. So it kind of might be slightly different. But I really liked her stuff I've seen from Amy Holden and Rita Mae. Jones or Brown, but they talked basically saying it was getting back at all the obnoxious teenage boys that they saw at high school, and I really like the fact that you can get a slash movie that works, that is written by women, potentially for women as well. But yeah, no, I think I really liked her in that she's a good thing, and again, hopefully it's a film that we'll come back and look at some point. Did you have anything else you want to say about her, Nathan?
No, I think I said what I wanted to say about her.
She pretty much turns Russ Thorne into like a quivering little Nancy by the end of the movie.
She castrated him.
Yeah, right, exactly. I always liked her too. I thought she's a pretty good little heroine.
Absolutely. Well, for me, there's going to be no surprise. It's Jamie Lee all the way. Although I've got a love-hate relationship with Jamie Lee Curtis because she called herself at the time, and again, this is having read this David Grove book, all the way through, she calls herself the Queen of Crud. And when she's talking about crud, she's talking about her slasher movies, not Halloween, but everything else. And she's always acknowledged that Halloween gave her a career, but she pretty much hated everything else. I think she really hates Prom Night. I think she didn't mind Terror Train too much, and I think she quite liked Road Games.
She hates Halloween too. I'm just at that point in the book now myself.
She does hate Halloween too.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair to her, I mean, again, as we said before, and Erik said earlier, Halloween 2 is the first slasher movie I ever saw. But yeah, Jamie Lee in it isn't given a great deal to do. But having said that, even though she's really drugged through most of the way through it, and she still brings that kind of vulnerability and that empathy to that role, which is really saying something for something so completely underwritten. And I think it's interesting that Jamie Lee obviously was Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis's daughter, so she was kind of Hollywood royalty. But in real life, she was actually a cheerleader. She was really ballsy. You know, she smoked, she took drugs, and all sorts of kind of things. It says in the book. And she couldn't really understand why she'd been chosen by John Carpenter, Deborah Hill for Halloween. She just didn't understand why. But they saw in her something, this kind of vulnerability, and they said for Laurie Strode had to be vulnerable and had to be. The audience needed to be shouting at the screen, saying, wanting her to survive. And it comes back to the unlikable characters in the film, and a film like Blood Night, which ends in such a, I can't even remember who's the last girl standing in that. They're all very interchangeable. But Jamie Lee has that empathy. She's a very, very good actress, and I just I think she's really believable in that role. And even though she called herself the Queen of Crud, she chased those roles in Terror Train and Prom Night herself. She really wanted them, but she brought something special to those roles. And I think she realizes that she will always be best known for those. And especially, unfortunately, at the moment, from what I can hear, she's the thing she's doing at the moment is commercials for laxative yogurts.
Activia.
Which is
Activia.
It's a shame, really, because she's doing crap like Hollywood. What's it? Chihuahua.
Chihuahua.
I guess by doing these commercials, she really is the Queen of Crud.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a real shame. I'm not expecting her to be in loads of horror movies or anything like that, but I do feel, I respect her. She got out of horror movies, not, it's a shame she did, but she did, and she kind of proved herself. But she hasn't really got a career at the moment. I think it's a real shame because I do really like her as an actress. And I hear she's some people. If you bump into her, she can either be nice as pie or bite your head off, and so you take your chance with her. But who knows? Maybe Jamie Lee will be on next week's podcast. So tune in.
Come on, she did Christmas with a Crank, and that's a horror film right there.
Yeah, well, absolutely,
and Perfect with John Travolta.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was it? House Arrest.
Yeah.
I liked House Arrest.
Oh.
But she should
It
be.
was funny.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, she wanted to be doing the same kind of films, the things that Meryl Streep and people like that were doing, and she never quite got that.
No.
But I think she's, those terror flicks that she did. Because I remember she said about one thing she said was when she talked about her horror films back in 1980. She said that running around and screaming, it was a reaction to the boring 1970s. Now, I didn't think 1970s boring, but I think she is the epitome of the late 70s, early 80s slasher movies. She'll always forever be number one for me, even if she doesn't like the films, even if she has mixed feelings about her past. I think she's probably the best actress who's played a final girl in a slasher movie. She'll always be my number one final girl. So. Have we got anything else to say about the final girl phenomenon while we're on the subject?
Yes. Earlier in the show, you said we might mention reprehensible final girls.
Okay,
there is
yeah,
one.
yeah.
I think Nathan will agree with me on this.
Yes, I will.
Amy, who's what's her Cook? What's her name?
AJ.
AJ Cook.
AJ Cook
from Friday
Ripper
the
Letter
13th
from
parts.
Hell. She was in Final Destination 2, and
she's great in it.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
and she was in a movie called Ripper Letter from Hell, and she was the bitchiest, worst final girl that could ever be on screen.
She's mean to everybody. I mean,
really
she's just a
rude.
bitch.
You're right, and she's the final girl. She's not.
And don't forget
likable at all.
the Laurie Strode Redux in Halloween and Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's one.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, yeah.
Yes.
She's terrible.
Taylor Scout Compton, we will be talking about probably a little bit in the April Fool's Day Redux, won't we? But yeah, I don't understand why, the final girl is supposed to be somebody you want to identify with. I mean, it's like having a romantic comedy, and obviously I don't watch many romantic comedies. People don't die through axe murders and stuff, but enough in them, unfortunately.
They should.
They should, yeah. But you wouldn't have a romantic comedy where both characters were real jerks and really horrible to each other, would you?
You obviously haven't watched a lot of romantic comedies.
I haven't actually, no, I must admit.
Because 60% of them would be like that.
You're probably
I think
right.
Jennifer Aniston is making a career out of that.
Yes.
Yeah, you're probably right. But I really don't understand why, why people want to, or why filmmakers fill the films with people that they hate, unless they secretly really, really hate those characters themselves and revel in that. I don't know. It's a kind of bizarre thing. But as far as Final Girls, I mean, Dana Kimmel. I joke about Dana Kimmel because I secretly do love her and her acting. Well, I say acting advisedly, obviously, but
I think you might have got rid of your stalker now by admitting that you love her. So
I know. Well, I think we all know who my stalker is, but no names mentioned. But yeah, Dana. I mean, she's great. I mean, she's value for money. I think she kind of raised a lot of wrath because the whole thing about her saying this kind of stuff about her, saying she managed to cut loads of stuff out of Friday the 13th Part 3 in the script because she didn't agree with it. And it's kind of like, what film did she think she was making? And I think the producers just humoured her because obviously didn't really cut anything out of it. But she, she makes mediocre movies more fun. Sweet 16 wouldn't be the film it is, and it isn't much of a film, but there wouldn't be the film it is without her, open mouth acting throughout it. That
picture that you have on your site, or that you did have, of her from Sweet 16 is hilarious.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites. I just love that whole thing, and I love the. Can I just play? Have I still got it, or if I? Can I just play this little clip? We've already heard it before, but this is Dana. A little bit of Dana for you.
But for all we know, the killer could be sitting right next to you.
Yes, and it's just a beautiful. There you go, Dana, emoting with this. I know.
It would have been great to see. It would have been great to see Dana Kimmel do the "Leave me alone" line from The Initiation.
That would have been great if she turned up. If she turned up as the killer at the end of The Initiation, that would have been even better. And talking of The Initiation, we've had some replies from some of the cast. So, Joseph, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you've been talking to?
I haven't talked to anyone.
Oh no, sorry, Erik. Sorry, I do apologise.
Yeah.
This is live radio for you.
I'm just trying to call up the email here now. I was talking to Joy, who plays glamorous assistant Heidi in the
glamorous
in the film. She was really, really nice and very cooperative. Like, she was too busy to respond to us in time for the podcast last time because it happened on Super Bowl weekend, and she was busy working on that because she's a journalist. So I sent her the link to the podcast, and she had a listen, and she really liked it. She said we were all very funny. I don't know if she was too impressed with being referred to as a glamorous assistant, but she did listen to the podcast. I'm just trying to call up the email here.
Oh, she laughed at that.
Sorry?
Told me she laughed at the whole glamorous assistant thing.
I think she did.
She has a sense of humour about it. Yeah.
I'm just worried now that Dana's at home crying into her vodka martini.
Obviously, she's listening to this. I mean, everyone is.
Absolutely.
She was saying in response to your comment, Justin, about her possibly turning up as the killer at the end of The Initiation, with maybe unveiling a mask. She said her husband has a vision of her appearing in Saw 15, The Revenge of Heidi, which she thinks would be a good idea. Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, it's why not? Let's get some of these people on the show if we can, if they're up for it. The other person, I'm Marilyn Cargan. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Who played I can't remember which character she played now, but she played the girl who is the one that gets dragged into the lift at the end. She's kind of she's the final girl and the evil twins' best friend, and she's going to get back to me today, hopefully. So next time we talk, I might get a little bit of feedback. But those answers will be on the Hysteria Lives website at some point soon. If we get enough information,
You got it right.
Sorry,
you got the name. You got the name right.
Oh, I did. I know. I need prompt cards. It's like America's Next Top Model when they have to do one of those adverts. It's a bit like that. So
easy, breezy, beautiful.
Hysteria Lives. But I might.
She says, speaking of easy, breezy, beautiful, I just want to say, Joy did say that she was told to dress down for the role because the director told her she was, quote, too pretty. These are her words. Okay. And she said he wanted her to wear something grubbier, have less attractive hair, and no lip gloss. And to put on her big glasses as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it wasn't all her fault.
Oh, bless her. And it's a shame. It would have been fantastic for her to turn up at the end and pull off a glass. If she pulled off those glasses and her face came off and it'd been Dana Kimmel underneath, that would have been even better.
Oh, wow.
That would have been, can you imagine?
I probably would have collapsed.
Okay, well,
we lost Erik.
Shall we take a break? We're coming up to the 55-minute mark, so shall we take a quick break to listen to the April Fool's Day trailer? And when we come back, Josie's going to talk us through the 1986 semi-quasi slasher. So here's the April Fool's Day trailer.
Paramount Pictures cordially invites you for a weekend getaway at the party to end all parties.
This is the craziest party that could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, cause I don't want to see.
April Fool.
Welcome to my home and lifestyles of the rich and undeserving.
Wrong.
Cheers.
Join 8 privileged guests who are just dying to have fun.
Wow, what is this? The bridal suite? You like it?
The ladies.
I find a use for it.
The gentlemen.
We did on the first date.
The young.
Well, basically, I possess an essential lack of seriousness.
And the restless.
You are such a jerk.
Everyone is having such a good time. It's scary.
Is something wrong?
You're dead.
Radio is blasting. Someone's knocking at the door. I'm looking at my girl. She passed out on the floor. Nikki! I see someone in the hall I've never seen before. Don't know what it is. I don't want to see it.
April Fool's Day. Get ready to party till you drop.
Right, Joseph, do you want to lead us into April Fool's Day?
All right, April Fool's Day was directed by Fred Walton of When a Stranger Calls fame, and it was released in March of 1986 on 1,202 screens. It's basically about 9 collegiate acquaintances who gather together on this mansion on an island during the April Fool's Day weekend. It's owned by their unfortunately named friend Muffy, played by 80s staple Deborah Foreman. Basically, there's a dangerous prank before their arrival, and it results in this very deckhand guy getting disfigured, and they arrive on the island in kind of sour mood, but they attempt to put it out of their minds. As they settle in for the weekend, a series of cruel and personal pranks begin to take their toll until eventually someone begins trimming the guest list in true Agatha Christie fashion. I've always liked this movie. It's always been a favorite of mine. I think it's due to the fact that it features some of the most extremely affable characters ever grace a slasher movie. It scores points for turning the slasher film conventions upside down with a wink and a nod long before Scream came along in 1996. It doesn't take itself too seriously while being clever, and as I said before, the cast give it their all with a smile. I particularly liked Jay Baker as the cornpone Harvey Hal Edison, and Leah Pinsent as the quiet Nan Youngblood. And, of course, we got Amy Still as the final girl, Kit Graham. I think the one thing that seems to divide people about April Fool's Day is that ending. And I am going to spoil it, so if you haven't seen it, be warned. Then again, if you haven't seen it, chances are you won't be listening to this podcast in the first place. As it turns out, the series of mostly off-screen murders in April Fool's Day turn out to be an elaborate prank pulled by Muffy, pretending to be her murderous asylum escapee twin sister Buffy, with a B. It's basically all a test run for a theme weekend she's planning in order to pay property taxes on the mansion she has inherited. Most people were pretty offended when it turned out that the final body count was a whopping 0, and they felt cheated. I thought it was a clever joke to pull on the audience. It never really cheats. I mean, the proof is right there in the title. For the people who are more slasher conscious, they actually want real deaths. There was an alternate ending filmed where after everyone had learned that the entire weekend was one long joke, one of the characters eventually actually starts killing people. If you browse around on the internet, there's some rare screenshots actually depicting this ending, and I think a few of them can actually be found on a couple of the DVD releases. And I'm going to ask you guys what you think, but before I do that, I'm just going to note that the film was remade in 2008 by the Butcher Brothers, and the less said about it, the better. It's
Butcher by name, Butcher by nature.
It goes back to to our last show in which we discussed how most recent slasher films are littered with reprehensible characters and done without any kind of heart. It's an abysmal remake, and I generally hate remakes to begin with, but this one right here just pretty much takes the cake. It's one of the worst slasher films I've ever seen. But I don't know, Justin, what do you think about April Fool's Day?
Well, I actually watched it this afternoon. I didn't have it on DVD because I was always holding out for the hope that it would eventually be released with that extra kind of ending put back in. But of course, we're talking about Paramount here, so you're lucky to get a DVD case with Paramount, let alone anything else. I liked it. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I remember liking it. I felt that it didn't quite. It took a long time to get going. I mean, I liked the characters. It was. I really liked the opening and them sort of bouncing off each other verbally, and it actually felt like a group of friends who were together. So it actually had that that real kind of spark to it, which I really liked. I thought I can understand why people would have been disappointed when they went to see it, not just because of the ending, the twist ending, but it was probably sold at the time as another Friday the 13th. And originally, when it opened very strongly, and then the box office dropped off. I think the budget for it was like $5 million, which is more than pretty much any Friday the 13th film. It eventually made about $12 million, which I worked out is about just a shade under $25 million today. So not like a flop by any means, but I think it did drop off. And I think Fred Walton, I think he said that he was disappointed the way it had been pushed, because I don't think Paramount really knew how to sell the film, and they ended up trying to sell it as a slasher movie. And I think it probably could have played a little bit more with the Friday the 13th conventions. I think there's only one sort of moment in the film where one of the characters comes in, finds someone, looks like they've been stabbed in the crotch, and she turns around, there's someone in sneakers behind the door, and she turns around and has that moment, which is comes straight out of a Friday the 13th movie. But the rest of it, I think they spent a little bit too much time on the pratfalls and the other stuff. And also the other thing that got me was, and this is part of the reason why I love 80s slasher movies, is the whole thing where the ridiculousness of it was the fact is that Muffy could have been killed at any time by anyone. If Amy still had picked up a knife and thrown it at Muffy, it could have all ended there. And also
she mentions at the end, she said she almost was.
She does.
Killed by Harvey because he had a gun.
Absolutely, but it's that whole thing when she said, I went a little bit too far by playing a baby crying to someone who had an abortion, and I was thinking, yeah, but even you probably wouldn't do that even if you're setting something like this up. But of course, we're talking about within the parameters of a 80s slasher movie here. It looked great. I really liked it. I found Amy Steele, like we said, people have said earlier, and I would agree. She wasn't. She didn't seem as effortless in this as she did in the other films. She seemed almost a little bit self-conscious, I thought. And the film really came alive right at the end when you've got Muffy sticking that massive great knife through the door trying to get in, and her boyfriend screaming, and then of course the big reveal. I would have liked that to have been a little bit longer, a little bit more, if that kind of chase sequence would have been good. But yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. I mean, but yeah, it didn't hold up as well as I remember. So that's me.
What about you, Eric? What do you think?
I'd be kind of the opposite to Justin. I felt it didn't hold up for me when I saw it first, and I appreciate it more now. When I saw it first, I was exactly like you were saying. I felt like, because all the murders were happening off screen, obviously they had to do that because of the way the film ends. I felt that was a cheat, and then I felt the ending where it turns out nobody is killed was a cheat, and so I felt the whole film was a bit, meh, I think is the word the young kids use today. And then I felt like repeat viewings didn't really hold up when you know the outcome of the film. But I mean, I watched it twice this week, and that was the first time I'd seen it in about 10 years. And I think if you approach it as kind of more of a comedy, or more of a sort of a kind of breakfast clubby type film, it really, really works. I mean, as Justin said, the ensemble cast are really good together.
There's not. I don't think there's an unlikable person in the entire movie.
There isn't. No. Yeah, and even like the jerk character, the character name is Chaz. I mean, even he's likable. I mean, a lot of slasher films could take a leaf out of April Fool's Day book in terms of the characterizations. So I mean, I did really like. I still don't think it's like, it's not up there with Halloween or Friday the 13th for me, or My Bloody Valentine. But I mean, it's good fun, and considering it came along in 1986, it's far better than, anything else that was around at the time, including, later Friday the 13th sequels. And Justin, you were saying, you were wondering if it was marketed as a slasher. Well, I mean, I certainly remember it having the big sort of bold letters on top of the video, sort of from the makers of Friday the 13th, sort of promising all kinds of, gory delights that never sort of transpire. But, 16-year-old me said no, but 37. There you go. That's my age. 37-year-old me says yes. I do actually quite like it. And Justin, were you watching it on VHS?
No, on video actually. And I was just going to say about the video, which surprised me. It's in the UK, guys, in America, we have like different rating systems to you, and we have basically like PG, like you do, but like 12 and 15 and 18, and you can't get those films out if you're under that age. Now, April Fool's Day in this country, in England, is a 15, but in Ireland it's an 18. Now,
that often happens, yeah.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Because there's nothing in it that could be...
Because we've recently had, that I Spit on Your Grave, the original, has recently come out in DVD in England with maybe 2 or 3 minutes of cuts to it. That version is banned over here.
Really, still? Okay.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, like, you should really try and catch it on DVD if possible, because it's shot in like 235 widescreen, and it looks stunning. It really is,
It's what I
really, really nice.
I saw it in widescreen today, and it looks really, really nice. I mean, it's you can tell the extra money spent on it, because there's no explosions or anything like that. They spent probably 2 or 3 times the budget they did on most of the Friday the 13th films, but a lot of that goes on. It just looks great. It looks great. I mean, it's very much like that lakeside setting, Friday the 13th type setting. But it looks beautiful. And it looks like the perfect summer's day. It just looks. I think it's filmed on Vancouver Island, wasn't it, in Canada? So it wasn't even filmed in the States, but it was.
Well, just one. I always point out fashion disasters. I'm sorry, but there is one fashion disaster in April Fool's Day to rival the pink blouse in the initiation last week. We've got Amy Steele in what looks like a pink pillowcase when she goes to the boathouse to get it on with her boyfriend. I mean, Amy.
It was an unfortunate one.
It was, yeah. Well, actually, that's one of the scenes I like, where the dead, in inverted commas, body floats underneath the floorboards. And you can see it. You can see his face through the gap. I remember that being sort of one of the big selling points of the trailer, because the trailer was on the front of a lot of videos back in the day. That's what really, inspired me to seek it out. And I think that sequence was really, really effective, even though it turns out he's not dead. Although it was a good makeup job by whoever the guy was.
It was. I was just talking about Amy Steele very quickly. Sorry, just and Nathan's going to talk about what he thought about it as well. But I just wondered if Amy Steele, all of her fashion choices in that film were pretty bad, weren't they? Was she pregnant in the film, or was she put on weight? Because She's a beautiful woman, but everything she had in there. She looked like she was wearing duvet cases all the way through.
I know. I think it was the fashion of the time. I have it on in the background here, and she's wearing a man's shirt and tie at the moment.
She looks a little heavier in April Fool's Day than she did in Friday the 13th Part 2.
I just wonder if she's covering that up, because she's a beautiful woman, and when you see her now, you see photos of her now, she's still a very beautiful woman, in her 50s. But yeah, she in Friday the 13th Part 2, she's wearing a bikini and she looks great. But I just wondered why she kind of covered up in that film. But yeah, sorry, that's enough about fashion for the moment.
Nathan, what do you think? What do you think about April Fool's Day? I already know what you think, but tell the world what you think.
I love it. I've loved it since I first saw it. I still love it today. I'd easily put it in my top 10 movies of all time. I think that I pretty much agree with what you all have said. I think the characters are extremely likable, and that's one thing that helps keep the movie going. Even in the down spots for me, when nothing else is happening, the characters are so likable when they're talking to each other. That keeps me interested. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is the music in the movie. I love the score to this movie. I think they did a fantastic job with the score. And I love the opening credits sequence. I think it sets up the movie nicely. It's a young girl's birthday party, and her parents hand her a gift, and it's like a jack-in-the-box. And as she's turning it, at the end, like this little monster pops out and scares her, and all the adults are laughing. So I think that's a pretty mean prank to play on your little kid at their birthday party. Of course, it's probably something I would do.
Kind of gives you a little window into her growing up and pulling this huge, elaborate prank on all of her friends.
Although I think there was a mistake when they wrote this movie. I think that Muffy should have been the deranged twin. I mean, you grow up with a name like that, I think you would be the one that goes crazy, not Buffy.
That's why I said she has an unfortunate name, and I think one character in the film, Harv, he kind of makes a joke about it, calls her Muff Dive.
Yes.
Muffin stuff.
What's it short for? He was going, it must be short for something, and it's kind of like...
It's I think it's short for Maureen. It's certainly in this part of the world, people who were called Muff in the olden days were called Maureen.
Were there people called Muff?
Yes, I had a relation called Muff.
Has there been many Muffs in your life, Eric?
There has. I had an aunt called Muff.
Okay.
Her name is Maureen.
I've never known a Muff. I've never known a Muff.
On an aside, can I just say there's a village in Donegal, which is in the north of Ireland on the coast, and it's called Muff, and they've got a diving club there, and it's called Muff Divers Club, and it's actually real. If you Google it, you'll find it. Fantastic. It's not a joke.
See, these are the things, when you listen to this podcast, you think you're just going to be hearing about cheesy slasher movies, but in fact you could learn something new every week. So
yes,
we have a little bit. We have a little bit of everything for everyone. So.
Absolutely.
There you go.
I want to ask one of you. What do you guys think about the remake?
I hate it.
I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would.
About the remake.
I hate it. I mean, it takes everything I like about the original and screws it over. I mean, the characters are so unlikable in the remake. I wanted it to be real. I wanted them all to be dead, but no such luck.
All right. What about you, Justin?
I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was going to do, and that's just partly because I'd heard so much negative press about it that everyone hates it. So when I watched it, I thought it was going to be really dreadful. It was just dreadful. It wasn't. It was inoffensive. It was. I mean, the characters were, like you say, completely unlikable. Bizarrely, it's Frank how do you say, Mancuso Jr., who was behind the Friday the 13th films, or some of them, the sequels, and April Fool's Day, was also behind this as well. And from what I could glean, the remake started out as a direct remake of the first film, but they took it in a different direction. But it was full of unlikable characters again. The irony was Taylor Scout Taylor Scout. What's her last name? Compton.
That's it.
She's
that girl.
Yeah, I mean, she's so horrible in the Halloween films, and you just wanted to die. Whereas she plays a very nice character, at least in the beginning of the remake, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, it was kind of it had I mean, with April Fool's Day, the original, it was tongue in cheek and it was humorous. But it was humorous aside, while the story kept going, and it had that slight. It was kind of Scooby-Doo, but slight malice underneath it, which kind of underpins it, kept everything on the level. Whereas this film, it was things like one of the characters was running away from a van, and he was going ooh like this, and making this comedy sound as he's running away from a van. You're thinking, my God, what on earth are they thinking to do this? Because it's either you go for like Linda Day George being attacked by a kung fu professor in pieces, or you keep it at least on the level. And they could have the balance was all over with this. The only thing I liked about the ending actually was about the film was the ending, and I don't. If you don't watch it, you don't want to watch it, so I will spoil it. But ultimately, it kind of ended. There wasn't an evil twin. It was all to do with debutante dies, and I like the fact that Taylor Scout was going, "You ruined my debutante coming out ball." You know, that bit I quite liked. I thought it was quite funny that she was kind of like potentially the killer because someone had ruined her party, and I thought that was quite a nice flashback to early '80s kind of sort of cheesy endings. But then, of course, it was a double blank when they were framing the woman that had somehow they all decided she'd killed this woman. It didn't really make any sense. But I like the fact that then she got shot in the head and it was all actually wrapped up. So it had lots of different things towards the end, but it didn't save the film. I mean, the film was dreadful. I bought it for a couple of pounds. I'll never watch it again. But yes, it's everything is bad about sort of glossy remakes. It's soulless. It had about as much danger and about as much entertainment value as Murder, She Wrote. Murder, She Wrote is perfectly entertaining, but it's not what you expect from a horror film, and it wasn't a horror film. And I actually quite liked The Hamiltons by the Butcher Brothers. The first film they did was quite interesting. It wasn't great, but it was certainly much better than this. So yeah, I thought it was blah, really. Certainly not as good as the original.
How about Eric? What do you think about Kajiga?
Yeah, I'd agree.
I mean the April Fool's Day.
I think Kajiga are fantastic. There comes the edit point. No, the April Fool's Day remake. I totally agree with what Justin just said. I mean, I didn't think it was as bad as I had anticipated, because I'd heard so many bad things about it. I thought what was weird about it was that the kind of final girl and the villain were the same person, which I suppose if that was deliberate, then it was kind of a bold, unusual move, I guess. But it was tedious, and it was filled with the most obnoxious characters, which was ironic, seeing as well. That's what we discussed in the last podcast. I got mine for 99p on the internet secondhand, and it's gone straight into the bottom of my wardrobe, never to be seen again. And I don't think I wouldn't even make that money back on eBay, I wouldn't say.
No, I was wondering if it was there was ever any ideas of it actually going to the cinema, or it was always going to be a direct-to-video release.
Yeah.
Because
I believe it's supposed to be just direct-to-video the whole time.
Was it? Because I think it had a relatively big budget, didn't it, for a direct-to-video release? And I don't know if it was Paramount who did it.
Can I ask a question? Was it worse than the Prom Night remake, which I have yet to see?
I think it was.
I haven't seen it, the Prom Night one.
Well, I've only seen a bit of it. I think it wasn't as bad as the Prom Night. I think it was sillier than the Prom Night remake. The Prom Night remake was worthy, and it was like it sucked all the life and enjoyment out of the slasher movie. It was just it was just boring. And at least this film was crap, but it wasn't. It had a few. It was colourful. They did things like they made I was reading about how they dressed the people in the different colours, like Taylor Scout starts off in white and she ends up in black, and the main character's in red all the way through. So at least they thought about some of these things. And it was actually had a really oversaturated look, with the really camp gossip monger journalist and all those kind of things. So, I mean, it had a few things.
Oh, he wore horrible silver shorts, didn't he?
Those silver shorts, he did.
Flapped his hands around in a very camp, stereotype manner.
Yes, and I don't think he's gay in real life. Well, as far as I can tell, but yeah, it would look like. It just looked like it was made by nobody in it really wanted to be in it, and I do wonder sometimes, because when we talk about films and directors and someone like John Carpenter, you almost think that these people call the shots, but someone like the Butcher Brothers probably hired to turn some script into that. I mean, I just got the impression that everyone behind, including people acting in April Fool's Day remake, just didn't really invest anything into it at all. They saw it just as a blip on their CV, just something to do and get the hell out of there. And I think that really came over. There was no passion behind it.
Well, one of the contrast things I wanted to say in the original April Fool's Day, all of the characters, you wouldn't call them like beautiful. They're just kind of average, plain people. In this remake, everyone's like extremely gorgeous. They don't even seem real. They seem like they're just airbrushed onto the screen or something like that.
Well, it took the idea of them being privileged, didn't it? Like privileged kind of teenagers or early 20-somethings, which was in the original film. But what kind of came across ultimately, and they talked about them all being very privileged and being at college, and but they didn't come across as spoiled brats, did they? Which they did in the remake.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I agree. I agree with you that they were very. Certainly the main woman in the remake, her teeth were so white that she could if sunlight hit that, she'd blind you. I mean, they were just so ridiculously white. But in the original, they were quite beautiful people, weren't they? There weren't any really ugly people, apart from, even Nan, who was supposed to be this really kind of slightly mousy character. And that's one thing that didn't really work for me in the original, was that she was obviously very upset that, as you would be, if you'd had an abortion and someone found out about it and put a tape recorder of a baby crying in your closet, you probably would be quite upset.
She's very forgiving, I'll give her. That's what I like about Nan. She's very forgiving.
If she gets revenge, though.
Well, she
does. She scares the shit out of Muffy at the very end.
She does, but then it's almost like, ha ha, my abortion, ha ha, what a
That's true.
What a laugh. Oh, we can all laugh about it now. It's kind of, that doesn't really, ring true. And I wonder,
ha ha, my heroin addiction. Yeah, I found that bit a bit OTT, to be honest. I suppose you have to be a bit forgiving of these kind of plot devices if you're going to be a slasher fan. Otherwise, you'll just drive yourself insane.
Well, absolutely. I wonder who was the one that was in S&M, because the woman found all the S&M stuff.
It's the one who looks like Andrea Zuckerman from Beverly Hills 90210.
Yeah.
Nikki,
that's her.
Yeah, and what's funny is earlier when she's reading the little quiz for all the girls in the kitchen, when she gets to one part where it gets like all the questions of things you want to try, if you notice, she says S&M really fast and glosses over it and keeps going further down the list. She says it quick.
Yeah,
and it sounds like she says oral sex as well.
Yeah, she doesn't say oral sex. She says oral sex.
Oral.
Anal edgetry as well.
Which is sticking it in your ear, is it?
Yeah.
Here we go. We're back to metaphors again.
There was something
Spanish supermarkets again.
Oh no, we won't be visiting those. Not for a while.
Officer, I don't know how that video got into my bag.
But funnily enough, I'll bring it back onto away from scat and S&M and anal entry. Was you talked about the Beverly Hills Cop, Eric? But did you know that it was written by the person who came up with the story for Beverly Hills Cop?
I said Beverly Hills 90210, but we'll go with Beverly Hills Cop. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Beverly Hills Cop? What? What happened? How did I get in there?
Well, no, it's what's his name? Dan Allo Back apparently wrote the film, and he came up with the story of Beverly Hills Cop. So there you go. It's a little bit of trivia. So not particularly exciting, but yeah, no. I mean, there you go. But is there anything else to say about these films?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say the only thing I had left is I was very disappointed in Amy Steele in April Fool's Day in her final battle where she just backs against the door and screams, "No, no, no, stop." I mean, if that was Jenny, she'd be throwing chairs.
Absolutely.
And chainsaws and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the idea of I know she kind of basically I think they did. They got to the end of April Fool's Day, the original, and they started going, hold on a minute, I think the audience might have a problem with the abortion thing, and they might have a problem with her setting up a murder mystery weekends with random people all being killed off, pretended to be, and all this kind of stuff. And she had to do this checklist, didn't she? Go, well, of course, actually, I went a little bit too far with the abortion bit, and of course, I won't actually have people pretending to die and all these kind of things. But I mean, it was so ridiculous ultimately. But again, we have to forgive these things. But she could have come a cropper at any moment in that film, couldn't she? I mean, say if Amy Steele could have, anyone could have fallen down the well, or they did, didn't they? Those characters that fell into the well could have broken their neck. Anything could have happened.
Could have been killed by that snake.
Yeah, I don't think they did the health and safety checks, did they? Muffy didn't do her health and safety risk assessment when she did that, I don't think. So she wouldn't get away with it these days. But interestingly,
the entire plot is dictated by chance.
Well, and that's exactly the way that the Saw films work. It's dictated by knowing exactly what someone's going to do. If somebody chooses path A instead of path B, then the film goes off the rails. Yeah, it's
like a Rube Goldberg device. Every action has a reaction, and it still works because of the characters in the movie and the characters being so likable. You kind of gloss over all the coincidences and all that good stuff.
If the film was much more straight-faced and serious, then you would have a problem with those elements of the plot. But because it's kind of a fun popcorn movie, it's not an issue.
Right.
And you guys are right. The characters are way too forgiving, in my opinion. I mean, at the end, when Kit and Rob find out it's all a joke, I mean, they're mad for like 2 seconds, and then they're all laughing and drinking champagne together.
I know. It's kind of just one thing of interest, a little behind the scenes thing was I've got like a copy of Fangoria 53 with me because I used to collect them in the 80s. And there's an interview with Fred Walton in here, who obviously made April Fool's Day. And he was talking about, obviously, we said he made When a Stranger Calls and When a Stranger Calls Back. And he said that he was really fussy about what he did. He had loads of scripts thrust upon him, and he said no, because he was quite a hot property after When a Stranger Calls became very popular in the light of Halloween. And he was talking about how he got the gig. And he liked it because April Fool's Day wasn't mean-spirited in the same way, well, not mean-spirited, but like a bit depressing, like When a Stranger Calls, in his own words. But one thing he did say, which doesn't really work out, but he talked about how they filmed that snake scene with the character who does this similar thing to what happens to Russell Todd in Friday the 13th Part 2 when he gets pulled up and he's hanging from that tree, and you've got that snake kind of trying to bite them. And in Fangoria, he talks about how they were trying to get a snake to bite the character, but they ended up with a character. They took ages filming it, and they got a snake that wasn't poisonous to bite the character repeatedly. And I'm not quite sure how that kind of gels, with the film. And the other thing is in Fangoria, there's a number of pictures in here. Of characters, of images that aren't in the actual film. And there's one with one of the characters, which I think is Skip, actually, lying in the woods on the floor with someone who looks like they're wearing kind of like Jamie Lee Curtis' pirate pantaloon costume in Terror Train. So there's probably lots of stuff there. And they say, again, it would be lovely to see like a proper uncut version.
In the original ending, Skip is the one who turns out to be the real killer. He starts killing people because he's jealous of Muffy, who turns out to be his cousin, I believe it was.
Yeah. I mean, the irony is, actually, if they'd gone with that ending, they probably would have satisfied the Friday the 13th audience who came along to see the film, because that would have been the last thing they saw, and they would have gone away and went, oh, yeah, it's got a great double twist, and there are some actual murders at the end of it. Because apparently there was that twist, wasn't there? And then there was another twist that was written, which was, I'm going by IMDb, and obviously we all know how reliable that can be. But they said there was a revised draft of the script, including another version where Skip sneaks back onto the island to slay Muffy. He springs out of a closet, slits her throat, and then she first panics, but then realises it's all a joke, and all her friends standing around her. So again, it was almost like a mixture of what they filmed and what was filmed and released, and what was filmed with him actually starting to kill her. So, but yeah,
quite frankly, I'm glad they actually went with you said that he sneaks back in and he does that joke. If they did the joke in the movie, I'm actually glad they used the Nan character, because she's sort of the mousy, quiet girl. So I like that they gave her that moment at the end to kind of be kind of wild. With Skip, he was already kind of wild, so you would have expected it. So I like that it was actually someone you didn't expect.
Well, I just thought with the Nan character, when she's sitting there, everyone else was laughing and drinking champagne, and she was sitting there sipping but looking a bit morose. And I just thought, even though I'd seen the film a number of times, I just thought if I was watching it the first time, I might be thinking, what's she going to do? It would have been, in some ways, it would have been great if she'd actually suddenly just stood up, pulled a machete out of a bag, and beheaded everone in one fell swoop.
That would have been pretty.
Oh, that would have been great.
That would have been great. It's something like that, and then walked away, and dug up her baby or something. I don't know, something really off the wall. But as it is, it's a great film. It's a fun film. For me, it doesn't hold up quite as well as I remember, but I think because it relies on the twist. It's one of those films that I'd love to see with someone for the first time and see what the reaction would have been to that grand reveal. But there you go. But is there anything else you guys want to say? We come back to the hour and a half mark. So, or shall we wrap things up?
I think we're good. I do want to say that I'm really, really glad that Erik got his Kajagoogoo reference in.
Yeah.
When did you have that? I didn't hear that.
Next week, Duran Duran.
Did you slip it in while I wasn't looking?
We're also going to be discussing the negative effects that Susie and the Banshees has on Justin's Facebook persona.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that'll be a very short conversation, as I'm sure you well know.
Cut me off.
No, well, remember, I do have final edits, so anything I don't agree with will be edited out, or we'll have something. So I will get someone else to talk over you in a very bad dubbing,
like a stunt double, stunt voice.
Yeah,
Hi, my name is Joseph.
You can dub me like that young fella with the blonde hair from all those Italian films. He played Bob in City
Bob.
No. You want to dub you with like a Beavis. Dub you with like a Beavis and Butthead voice.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Well,
do you know what you can do it?
You're going to have to listen to the end.
I think you do.
But well, let's wrap up and say thank you very much, Nathan, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Oh, yes, I have. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you want to give us a plug for your blog site, which is definitely worth reading? You just started it, and it is very, very entertaining, and I'm keeping an eye on that. Do you want to give us the URL for that?
Oh, yes. It's axetogrinds.horrors.blogspot.com.
Thank you. And it's definitely worth a look. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone who gave us feedback for the last couple of shows, which is none of you bunch of cunts.
Well, they have been posting on the forum.
But they have been posting on the forum, yes.
I've got a few private messages and stuff.
Yeah, I know we've had a few of those. I mean, what we might do is we might get a one of those Skype things where you can get like a service where you can leave messages and we can play those back. So if there's an interest in that, do drop us a line through the forums or through either of the websites, Hysteria Lives or the Body Count Continues, because it'd be great to.
I would like to do that. I would like to have viewer mail on the thing, and it can be negative or positive. We'll read it. We don't care. Just send it in to us.
Absolutely, and also. Let us know what you think. What's your top 3 final girls? Do you agree with what we said? Are you Dana Kimmel's stalker or my stalker? Get in touch.
Or Eric's stalker.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, Debbie Gibson married her stalker, so maybe I might. So stalkers, why not? It could be fun. So if
you're comparing yourself to Debbie Gibson.
Sorry,
you're comparing yourself to Debbie Gibson.
Well, I think we're alone now.
He's going to be doing
Tiffany.
Shark movies.
Is it Tiffany?
That's Tiffany, yeah.
Oh dear. Well, I know they are.
That's cute as Debbie Gibson.
Well, they're meeting
He's going to be
together.
doing some sci-fi shark movies here soon, starring Justin Kurzweil.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, they are going to be in a Mega Shark movie together, aren't they? Soon.
They already have
and Tiffany.
They were in Mega Python versus Gatoroid, which is fantastic.
Oh, is it out? Is it out now? Well, I know they were filming it, but of course they probably filmed it in an afternoon, so I didn't realise it wrapped so quickly. So, but yeah, it'd be great. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I saw that giant piranha one with one of Tiffany or Debbie Gibson or whichever those interchangeable 80s pop stars. Maybe it's Toya.
You take that back.
Sorry, I had to do it.
Well, yes. Well, thanks, guys. And what we'll do is we shall play out with the.
Sorry, Justin. Go ahead.
No, we're going to play
dance.
Yes.
You better not be singing that during our run today.
Yeah, I'll try not to.
Well, I was going to say thank you for bearing with us through or talking about all the wonderful 80s pop stars like Susie and obviously all the Drek like Toya. So we will now end.
I'm out of here.
And catch a goo-goo. Yeah, well, less said the better. Anyway, so here we go. This is Hysteria Continues, and we'll see you next time.